What's up, people? Joe Winko here, your favorite Hawaiian guy, and here's my next episode of Joe Winko Talk. So, in all honesty, this is going to be quite a morbid and gloomy and personal episode of Joe Winko Talk. It's also going to be very strange, and the whole point of it is to tell you guys about what I've learned and what I read about online with this one particular topic I'll be discussing, but also to share with you guys what goes on in my autism mind and what I think about and how I think. And that's really the point of all my YouTube videos, honestly, for you guys to get to know me and what goes on in my autism mind. So, some of you guys may have seen the cryptic message video I posted earlier today. If you haven't, I'll have the link to it in the pinned comments. That video was basically a rundown of what I'll be discussing in this episode of Joe Winko Talk. The reason why I posted it is because I wanted to see what you guys would think of all of that, really, and what you guys would speculate about all of that and what you thought it would be about. That was basically a way of showing you guys how my thoughts work and what goes on in my mind, really. I'm also going to be discussing some rough times in my life. I'm going to be going over them. And if you guys want to know, like, my history and my past and everything, I'd recommend watching the story in my past episode of Joe Winko Talk. I'll have the link to that in the pinned comment. This all may seem a bit confusing and really weird, but just try to follow me. A couple months ago, I was watching some videos on YouTube about Japanese horror movies, and I heard of this one Japanese horror movie called 44444, and I was wondering why it was called that, and there was a person doing a review on it. It was a Japanese horror movie about a phone number being nothing but fours, and they said that 4 is an unlucky number in Japan because it means death in Japanese. Let me show you what I got when I typed that in on Google search. This is what it told me. There are 6 unlucky numbers in Japanese. Traditionally, 4 is an unlucky number because it is sometimes pronounced shi, which is the word for death. Sometimes levels or rooms with 4s don't exist in hospitals or hotels. And I thought that was really interesting because I never thought of number 4 as a number representing death or anything. However, the more I thought about it, and the more I thought about the rough times in my life where I almost did die and other rough times in my life, the more I noticed a correlation between number 4 being an unlucky number and the stuff that went on in my life. And it's kind of creepy, really. And that's what I'm going to be explaining in this episode of Joe Winko Talk. The first thing I thought of when I learned that number 4 was a number that represents death was Amy from The Walking Dead. She was a character who was on The Walking Dead during the first season, way back in 2010. She was honestly my favorite character. Amy and Andrea were my favorite characters. And, spoiler alert, I felt really sorry for both of them when they both died. If you watched my cryptic message video, one of the first things you see is Amy and Andrea on the water talking to each other. And I put that in there because I wanted to show how close Amy and Andrea were. And I wanted to show Amy in the video because she was one of my favorite characters on The Walking Dead. However, that episode of The Walking Dead was from episode 4 of The Walking Dead, Vados, and Amy died in the Vados episode of The Walking Dead. And I remember when I first saw that, and I thought it was really sad, because Emma Bell is one of my favorite actors, And seeing her die in that really made me sad because I wanted to see her in more episodes. But the thing you gotta remember is it's all fake. It's just on TV and everything. They're not really dead at all. But it was still really haunting and really sad. And I also felt really sorry for Andrea because Andrea was devastated by what had happened to Amy. And I'm going to get back to that really soon, how that parallels with my life. And here's where things start getting a bit weirder. So, there was this one show I used to watch back when I was a little kid, way back in 5th grade. It was called Flavor of Love Charm School, and it was about the girls from Flavor of Love going on a new live show in Charm School, and they were all competing to win this money on the show, and a lot of stupid stuff was going on during the show. It was actually really funny, Flavor of Love Charm School. It wasn't anything morbid or gloomy. I mean, yeah, there were some serious moments on that show, but it was mostly just funny and goofy stuff. There was a girl named Crystal who was in that competition, and I didn't really know much about Crystal, but over time, I thought more and more about Crystal on that show. And when she was eliminated in episode 4 of the Charm School series, that's why you see that in the cryptic message video that I posted, her going home and her being eliminated and her being sad about it too. Now, it's just a show. She just got disqualified from the competition, eliminated from the competition, I should say. But with my autism mind, I'm not exactly sure how to explain this, but I have like a really literal thinking mind, and I kind of felt sorry for her. I did feel sorry for her, really. But the main reason why I felt sorry for her is because my twin brother, who was murdered back in 1996, his name was Crystal, and he was murdered in spring of 1996. I'm not exactly sure on the month, but it was either March or April of 1996, and April is the 4th month of the year. As you all know, I'm actually adopted. My biological parents are deceased, and my biological father died in prison in 1998, and he was in jail for trying to murder me and for murdering Crystal. It was back when we were infants, and he drowned us. He tried drowning me, and he drowned Crystal in a sink full of water. And I don't remember that when it happened, but my adoptive parents told me about it, and it was back when I was a little kid, and I thought it was really messed up. As I said earlier, I don't know the exact month that happened, but if it was in the spring, it was either around March or April, and April is the 4th month of the year, which is why I'm making this video right now in memory of Crystal. And that's why that episode of Flavor of Love Charm School stood out to me, because Crystal was eliminated, and I just felt sad about that for some reason. Also, my twin brother Crystal reminded me of Amy and Andrea from The Walking Dead, because Andrea was devastated when Amy died, and I never got to meet my twin brother at all, because we were just infants when he passed away. We were only a couple months old, but I still feel sad that I never got to meet him, and I still don't think it's fair at all. It's not fair at all. Another thing that I always noticed, and this is going to sound really strange, but whenever people are sad, someone always says to them, "Are you okay? It seems like you're feeling a little blue." Like, when people say that you're feeling blue, it means that you're sad. I'm pretty sure you guys might have heard that before. Whenever I think of the color blue, I think of water, because out in the ocean, water is blue. And since the number 4 represents death in Japanese, another thing I thought of was I associate water with death because that's how my twin brother died, and also because I always get freaked out whenever I see pictures of flooding and flooding pictures. I explained that in my No Beach at the Mississippi River episode of Joe Winko Talk, that I can't stand looking at flooding pictures because they really creep me out and they make me feel uneasy for some reason. And there's one creepypasta piano song that always makes me think of gloomy stuff and always makes me think of water. It's that same song that you guys heard playing in my cryptic message video. The song is called Wind's Wreck, and I'm going to play a bit of it right now so you guys can hear it. Here it is. Whenever I hear this music, I always imagine a lonely person alone on a sailboat drifting away into the water and far away into the abyss. And the song itself is actually called Wind's Wreck. And it's actually wind that pushes the sailboat, so that's why I always imagine that. It's really sad and really haunting, honestly. That's why I chose it for my cryptic message video, because that's what always made me think of this. Speaking of water, back in October, I did a video blog in the city of Jacksonville, Florida, because that was one of the places I've been wanting to road trip to. My adoptive dad actually took me on a road trip there, and it was a lot of fun. I absolutely loved Jacksonville. It's a beautiful city. I wouldn't want to live there, however, but when I was at the park in Jacksonville, Florida, I remember I was reading this plaque thing that had some stuff engraved on it, and I remember seeing District 6 engraved on it, and I said in the video, like, I immediately thought of the Hunger Games because of my autism, because I love the movie The Hunger Games. And I thought that the city of Jacksonville, Florida, it didn't really make me think of District 6 from the Hunger Games. It reminded me more of District 4 from the Hunger Games. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Hunger Game districts, District 4 is... their main industry is fishing, and they are located near the water. And usually the people from District 4 know how to swim and are very athletic in the water and everything. That's what Jacksonville, Florida reminded me of, because there was so much water everywhere. And that's honestly the reason why I don't want to live in Jacksonville, Florida, because it floods so much. And as I said earlier, I associate water with death, and you actually can die from flooding and drowning too. And also, that water destroys all your stuff when everything gets wet. I actually live in a coastal area of Florida right now. I really want to move further inland away from the water, and also to a place that's less crowded too. But I really want to move further inland away from the water because I'm always afraid of the flooding and the storm surge from hurricanes. It freaks me out, honestly. But that's the reason why you saw the pictures of the flooding in Jacksonville, Florida. Also, Jacksonville, Florida in The Walking Dead, that was the city that my favorite characters from The Walking Dead were from, or that some of my favorite characters from The Walking Dead were from. Sasha, Tyrese, Lizzie, and Mika. They were all from Jacksonville, Florida, and another sad thing is they're all dead on the show The Walking Dead. All of their characters were killed off. And again, it's just a TV show. You can't let it bother you, but it's still kind of sad not seeing any of them on anymore because they were awesome characters too. And when I was in Jacksonville, Florida, I kept thinking of all of them over and over again. But I know the actors who play them are fine and everything, so I'm happy about that. That's another thing that gloomy piano song, Winds Wrecked, that's another thing that it makes me think of is District 4 from the Hunger Games because of that. Because when people say, oh, you're feeling blue, and that means that you're sad, but also blue is the same color as water, and District 4 has a lot of water, and Wind Wrecked is a really sad song. So that music always makes me think of District 4 from the Hunger Games. And I'm wondering if anyone else ever thought like that before. Does it make you think of like sailing away out into the sea whenever you hear that music? I'm very curious to what you guys think of that. So please let me know about that in the comments. I also found this one chart online when I googled my name a while ago. It's a Hunger Games chart that I made of a fan story I wrote about me being put in the Hunger Games. Let me show it to you right now. Here it is. Okay, so you can see me right there, the District 8 male tribute. I should have sworn that I was from District 4 because I remember a long time ago taking a quiz online and it told me that I would be from District 4 if I lived in Pan Am. But I think the reason why I probably changed it back then is because I never really knew how to swim at all, and I still don't quite know how to swim either. So that's why I put myself from District 8 instead. Also because I used to live in Wisconsin, and District 8 was supposed to be in someplace cold, and Wisconsin definitely is cold. But I still think it's very interesting how I called it the 44th Hunger Games. And this was long before I even knew that the number 4 meant death. Because you can even see, I'll have the link to the original post of this on the wiki site in the pinned comments. You can even see that I did post that back in 2012, and I didn't find out that the number 4 represented death till a couple months ago. It's creepy, but it gets creepier. Here's where things in this episode of Joe Winko Talk get extremely personal and extremely morbid and gloomy and extremely triggering. But don't let them upset you. I'm way past all of this. This was all hard times in my life back then, but I'm going to be going over this right now. I actually did a YouTube video about this, an episode of Joe Winko Talk about this. Back in 2014, I was really miserable because my adoptive mom was making me keep this job that I hated. And that year I started self-mutilation by cutting my wrist. I don't do it anymore. And I actually quit the job a long time ago, and I'm doing much, much better now. But back then, my adoptive mom told me that I couldn't quit the job at all because if she did, she would kick me out of the house. So I felt trapped in that situation, and it really wasn't a good time for me at all, really. Another thing I used to do a lot back then was I used to play Grand Theft Auto Vice City because I really loved Grand Theft Auto Vice City. And there's this one song called Self Control by a singer named Laura Branigan, and I really liked that song, and I read about her online, and I read that she died in her sleep in August of 2004, and this was all during that miserable time in my life where I was resorting to self-mutilation and where I hated that job that my adoptive mother made me keep. And this is what my crazy autism mind thought of back then, that I wanted to die in my sleep in August of 2014, 10 years after she did. So one night in August of 2014, I attempted suicide by overdosing on some of my mom's pills and also overdosing on NyQuil. However, they did not have an effect on me at all. It was not a good time in my life, and it still continued after that, too. And that was in year 2014, and Laura Branigan died in year 2004, and I almost died in year 2014. And with 4 representing death, that was another thing how that correlated with that event. But there's more to it, though. Back in summer of 2015, I was still working that job that my adoptive mother made me keep, and I was still extremely miserable. And they cut my hours down to 10 hours a week because my manager knew something was up and everything. But I wasn't allowed to quit because my adoptive mother said that if I quit, she would kick me out of the house. And with my autism mind, I took that very literally. I also suffer from a condition called type 1 diabetes, and I'm insulin dependent, and I have to have my insulin in order to survive. It's very difficult for a homeless person to get insulin. So if my adoptive mother kicked me out of the house and I became homeless, I wouldn't be able to get my insulin at all, and I would have ended up dying in 5 to 8 days, because that's how long it takes for a person with no insulin who's a type 1 diabetic to die. I did a whole episode of Joe Winko talk about that, and even some doctors tell me that I would actually be dead a lot shorter than that if I had no insulin to take at all. It's really chilling and really haunting, but back then I just didn't care, and instead I just wanted to run away instead. So I posted an ad on the rideshare section of Craigslist. It said that I wanted to run away. I had no specifics on where I wanted to go. I just wanted to get out of Wisconsin, as far away from Wisconsin as possible. And I said that I wanted to run away forever, and I posted a couple of pictures of myself on the ad. And I posted my phone number on the ad too. Then this stranger called me on the phone, and he told me that he was sorry about what I was going through and everything. And he said that he was going to be coming through Wisconsin, and he said that he was on his way to Arkansas. Like, out of all places, Arkansas. I never really thought much of that place before then, but after he told me about that, I kind of became obsessed with Arkansas, because that almost became the place that I was going to die at. What I thought would happen was he would come pick me up, and then he would drop me off out in a rural area of Arkansas where I'd be all by myself with no food, water, or insulin. And then I would wander around aimlessly until I collapse and die. And then they would find my body, and I'd be buried in a pauper's graveyard in Arkansas as a John Doe. I actually always imagined that I would be buried at Paradise Gardens Cemetery. That's an African American cemetery in northeastern Arkansas. I actually been there before, back in summer in 2017. A different stranger took me there to visit, and I did a video there as well. The only reason why that didn't happen was because the guy who was originally going to take me to Arkansas and leave me out for dead back in summer of 2015, when I went to the place he was going to pick me up from, he suddenly freaked out and drove off and left without me, and I remember being really pissed off and really angry about that as well. And how that has to do with the number 4 representing death is because of this. Now, this is going to sound weird, but this is what I notice. So for those of you who don't know the US and North America geography very well, North America is bordered by Canada to the north. So from the Canadian border, the first state from the Canadian border is Minnesota. The second state down from that is Iowa. The third state down from that is Missouri. And the fourth state down from that is Arkansas. And that freaked me out, really. I was like, what the hell? Because I always wondered, why Arkansas, out of all places? I thought it was probably just coincidental, and it's still coincidental. believe so, but I just thought it was kind of creepy how the number 4 representing death paralleled with that, and Arkansas being the fourth state down from the Canadian border. I was thinking about this a lot, so that might also sound a bit crazy too. It creeped me out. I also found it really interesting as well. That's why I wanted to talk about it in this episode of Joe Winko Talk. And I might be pushing it a little bit, but there's actually more. So, if you guys saw my necrophiliac story episode of Joe Winko Talk, just letting you know, I'm not a necrophiliac at all. It was someone else who was a necrophiliac in that story. I ended up quitting the job in December of 2015, and it was while me and my adoptive parents were on a road trip to Florida. They found out about it while we were in a hotel in Louisville, Kentucky. I explained this more in my necrophiliac story episode of Joe Winko Talk, and I got really pissed off. They got really pissed off, and we were arguing with each other. And my adoptive mom said that I'm not going to be living in her house sitting around doing nothing. So then I got really mad, and I told her that I was running away forever and I was leaving all my insulin behind and I was going to die out on the streets far away. So I took off. Someone gave me a ride to the Greyhound bus station. I was trying to go further south, as far south as I could go, because I figured I would be outside when I died and I didn't want to be someplace cold. I made it to Chattanooga, Tennessee. My adoptive parents called me, and they were still in Louisville, Kentucky, and they were really freaked out, and they were really sorry about what happened, and I told them I was down in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and they said that they were going to come down there and pick me up. And then there was some creepy guy I met online because I started to doubt everything again while I was waiting on my adoptive parents to come pick me up. And this creepy guy wanted to have sex with my dead body and everything when I told him my situation, and it's just sick how people are, really. He was like trying to take advantage of a hard time I was going through. And the messed up thing is, I have a tendency to attract sick people like that. I honestly try my best not to, and I try my best to avoid them. But my adoptive parents came, and then I went off with them, and then the rest of the Florida road trip was fine. And that was just a really stressful thing I was going through at that time. Now, how this relates to the number 4 is I checked how long it takes to get from Louisville, Kentucky to Chattanooga, Tennessee, how long the drive is. And when I looked it up, it said that the drive is 4 hours and 32 minutes. And remember, 4 represents death in Japanese. So I know you guys are going to say, Joe, you're overthinking this too much, or Joe, of course you're going to find how 4 connects with this, but I just think this is really, really weird, really. It's interesting, but I just think it's really weird and strange that how this all aligned like this. But it doesn't end there either. Over time, my adoptive parents and I, we weren't getting along well at all. Like 2016 was not a good year for any of us. So what ended up happening was they put me out into my own apartment. They put me into an apartment because they didn't have the guts to like throw me out on the streets and leave me for dead. But they said they were going to give me a year to get my act together and to figure out how to live by myself and everything, and that they weren't going to help me after that. So back in 2017, I was posting videos and ads online. I was really looking for someone to live with so I wouldn't become homeless and so I wouldn't die at all. But eventually, I just really did not care at all. And I didn't want to be on the streets when I became homeless because they do really messed up stuff to homeless people out on the streets. And it's sick and it's wrong, and I didn't want to die out on the streets in a city. So this is going to sound really twisted and really sick, but this was just a state of mind I was in back then. Since I had met that guy in Chattanooga who wanted to have sex with my dead body and everything, he was planning on taking me back to his place, and I remember he actually showed up at the bus station, and the waitress told him to leave, and that's why he left. But he actually showed up at the bus station, and I was telling him I didn't want to go with him. But I remember him mentioning that he had something to make it go faster, like something to make me die faster. So I was guessing he was gonna inject me with something or put me to sleep or something like that. That's what I was thinking. And plus, he was gonna take me back to his place, so I thought I was gonna die back at his place. So I wouldn't have been out on the streets or out in the middle of nowhere wandering around. But I technically didn't mind being out in the middle of nowhere either, and I'm going to be getting back to that soon. I started typing about all the stuff that was going on in my life and all the rough times that I was going through in my life on a couple of these necrophiliac web forums that I found, and I don't go on them anymore. Someone on one of those forums recommended that I sign up for a Satan worshipping web forum. Now, another thing, I actually am a religious person, believe it or not, even though I'm talking all this stuff about death. I think that's I think that's really the thing that brought me through all this was God helping me, and which is why I'm still here and still alive today, because God was helping me through all this. But they told me to sign up for the Satan worshipping web forum, and they said that I might be able to meet more outcasts there. And that was the main reason why I signed up for it, because I was looking for people with weird minds who were outcasts like I was, who would understand my situation and everything. This is going to sound really sick and really weird, but what I was looking for was someone to take me out of the state of Wisconsin when I became homeless, because I knew and I believed that I was going to die when I became homeless. And I didn't really care, really, because I'd been through so much stuff at that point and I was just done with everything. But I just did not want to die in the state of Wisconsin. That's what my whole mind was at. I just did not want to die in the state of Wisconsin. So I was posting about all of that on the Satan worshipping web forum, and I ended up getting a message from one guy. He told me that he admired me because I was really young and I didn't fear death at all. And he said that he understood why I didn't want to die in Wisconsin. And he made me an offer. He said that if I couldn't find anyone to move in with or find anyone to live with, and if I really became homeless by October of 2017, because that's when my apartment lease was going to expire and that's when my time would be up, he said that he would come to Wisconsin, pick me up from Wisconsin, then he would drive me down to an abandoned forest out in the middle of nowhere in North Carolina. He said it was somewhere along the border of Virginia and North Carolina. He said that he knew about that place and that no one ever goes out there, and he said I would be all by myself out there, and he said he would just leave me out in the forest to die of no insulin. I know that sounds really sick, and I know that sounds really fucked up, but I didn't care. That was exactly what I wanted if I didn't find a way to survive or anything. And I told him, sure, if nothing happens and if I can't find a place to live, just come to Wisconsin and take me to the forest in North Carolina. The thing was, I actually met this man in April of 2017, and I was expecting him to be like some extreme creeper or anything. But what I noticed about him was he actually kind of seemed like a caring person, really. And I'm going to explain that soon because there's more stuff to say about this. I was posting a lot of videos on YouTube of me talking about how I was worried about becoming homeless when my apartment lease expires and how I was looking for someone to live with. And then this one guy who I've been talking to on Grindr, he was watching my YouTube videos and he thought it would be funny to take me to see a psychic. So he took me to see a psychic, and basically the psychic did a whole death prediction of what would happen to me when I become homeless. She said I was going to die in October of 2017. She saw me wandering around in a forest in North Carolina. She said I was wearing my pointy red bandana and everything, and she said I was wrapped in a yellow blanket and I was crying out in the forest. And she said I was going to be alive out in the forest for a few days without food and water. But then she said on the last day, it would start storming out in the forest, and she said I would hear a loud crashing noise, and she said that a tornado would happen out in the forest, and she described in detail how I was going to be torn apart and mutilated by this tornado. And then she said later on my body was going to be found out in the forest, and then they were going to bury my body in a Carolina cemetery as a John Doe. Now, I honestly didn't care about that at that time, but there's another thing I believe, and quite a few psychologists believe this too. Your mind is kind of split up into two parts. There's the subconscious mind, and there's the conscious mind. My conscious mind didn't care about it, but I believe my subconscious mind was terrified of dying, because whenever I heard a really loud motorcycle go past my apartment, I'd always freak out because I thought it was a tornado. And I would have nightmares about tornadoes after she told me that. And one time I even went to Walmart one day and I had a vision of a tornado coming through, and I started freaking out because I thought there was actually a tornado outside that was going to kill me. But it was at 4 a.m., so no one was there. That was back in Wisconsin, though. But later on, what happened was I was typing about all of that online, and one of my adoptive parents' relatives somehow found all of that online, all that stuff I was typing, that I was going to be left out in the forest in North Carolina and killed by a tornado, and that I was going to become homeless. And then they told my adoptive parents about it. And originally, my adoptive parents told me, because I do believe in God. I'm religious. I believe God is more lenient than how people tend to describe him. But my adoptive parents are super religious, and they believed that if they had me become homeless, if they didn't help me at all, and since they knew that I was going to be running away with a stranger who was going to leave me out in the forest, and that they knew that I was going to be killed by a tornado because a psychic told them, they were scared that God would punish them for it. So instead, they sent me down to Florida to live with my adoptive parents' relatives, and here I am right now, alive and not dead at all. And getting back to the Satan worshiper guy who was going to leave me out in the forest in North Carolina, I haven't heard from him since then, because we kind of lost touch over time when I told him that I didn't need to be left out in the forest because I finally have a place to live. We stopped talking to each other. But I just remember when we were on the road trip to Alabama, because that's where he took me, to Alabama and to his cabin that he stayed at in Indiana. And I was showing him pictures of this one girl who was killed by a tornado in Alabama, and I was telling him that I felt really sorry for her, and he was telling me that it was really sad and that she was really pretty. And it seemed like he really was a caring person. Like, he wasn't really evil at all. It seemed more like he kind of had some mental issues, kind of like I do, honestly. And it doesn't seem like he was doing it to be evil or anything. It seemed like he truly understood what I was going through, and he truly wanted to help me out and leave me in the forest in North Carolina. I know that's really sick, but what else was he going to do? I mean, I'm assuming he can't have me come live with him for some reason, since no one else wanted me to go live with them at all. So that was really the only thing he could have done to help me in the first place. So at least someone was coming to help me, at least. So I did appreciate that. But how all of this relates to the number 4 representing death is because the psychic told me that I would be killed by the tornado on October 4th, 2017, out in the forest in North Carolina. There's also another thing about North Carolina that I noticed with this whole four meaning death in Japanese thing. So, I'm spiritually connected to Interstate 95. I always wanted to road trip I-95. I did a whole episode of Joe Winko talk about that a long time ago. It goes from Florida to Maine. I was also born in 1995, and it runs parallel to the Atlantic Ocean, where my Uncle Romario's ashes are scattered. I-95 starts in Florida, and it goes north, because that's how these roads run. They go from south to north, and they go from west to east. The first state that I-95 starts in is Florida. The second state that I-95 goes to is Georgia. The one after that is South Carolina. And the fourth state after South Carolina is North Carolina. So it's the fourth state on the northbound way of Interstate 95. Now I know I'm kind of overthinking it and pushing it, really, thinking that far into it, but still, that's... what the hell is up with that? Seriously. People were even telling me that there are reports of tornadoes hitting North Carolina in October of 2017. So I really feel like if it wasn't for this psychic telling me about that and everything, that I wouldn't be here today, really. I'd be buried in a Carolina cemetery as a John Doe. Another thing I believe is alternate timelines. I believe somewhere in an alternate timeline that really did happen, and I really am buried in the Carolina cemetery as a John Doe. And somewhere else in an alternate timeline, I'm buried in an Arkansas cemetery as a John Doe in Paradise Gardens, just like I mentioned earlier. But that's really morbid and gloomy stuff to think about, honestly, but I just needed to get that all off my chest. These past few weeks have been kind of stressful for me lately. Nothing extremely bad has happened. I've just been feeling down, and all this stuff just kept coming back to my mind. And I just wanted to vent this all out. And I also thought the number 4 thing I read about online was really interesting, with the Japanese believing that number 4 represents death. And I wanted to explain the cryptic message video. That's why you see the numbers next to the states leading down to Arkansas. That's why you see the route from Louisville to Chattanooga, Tennessee. And that's why you see the picture of the tornado. And in my opinion, that's the scariest tornado picture I found online, because it's happening at night. But there's also another thing in that video. Now, this thing isn't really... it's not really extreme or anything, but you see Interstate 4. I remember last summer, a stranger I met online took me on a road trip to Flagler Beach, Florida, and I loved Flagler Beach. It's such a peaceful place. The road we took to Flagler Beach, we had to drive up Interstate 75 for a while, and then we took Interstate 4 all the way across the state of Florida to get to Flagler Beach, Florida. And I filmed a video there, and it was an awesome time, really. Flagler Beach is a beautiful place. It's kind of like a country town mixed with a beach. It's not too crowded. I mean, I was seeing quite a few tourists there, but it's not nearly as crowded as the beaches I live around. I'll tell you guys that. I don't like living in crowded areas at all. So, there's another crazy thing that I'm going to tell you guys, and this is my autism. My autism causes me to have a really crazy imagination. The only biological family member who I've ever known was my biological uncle, Romario, who lived in the Dominican Republic. Me and him lived in the Dominican Republic together from 2007 to 2010. But what happened was he went in a coma in 2010 from brain cancer, and he passed away in 2012. And after he passed away, his ashes were scattered into the Atlantic Ocean, and I always felt spiritually connected to the Atlantic Ocean. Another thing I noticed while I was living with my uncle Romario was that he had these drawings everywhere of this really muscular man holding a trident. And I was always curious about those drawings, but I never asked my uncle Romario who that character is or anything. I'm not sure why, but it wasn't something that I bring up. It was just something that was like, oh, I wonder who that is. But I just never felt curious enough to ask my uncle Romario, who is that man in those drawings holding the trident and wearing the crown? Later on, however, I was looking at some stuff online and I saw one character, one well, I don't want to call him a character, but this is the only thing I could think of calling him. He was a Roman god, King Neptune, the king of the sea, and I recognized him from the drawings right away, and that's how I found out that that was King Neptune, and that wasn't till years after my uncle passed away. And this may seem crazy, but this is what I always imagined. I believe that when I die, the spirit of King Neptune will come and take my soul and will guide me out into the Atlantic Ocean where my uncle Romario's ashes were scattered and reunite us together. That's what I always believed. And I mentioned that before in a couple episodes of Joe Winko Talk. And I know people are going to think it sounds crazy, but in all honesty, if you think that sounds crazy, it's just as crazy as the stuff you see written in the Bible and the stuff you see in religions. Like, someone came up with this stuff and someone believed this stuff. That's why so many people believe it now. And it really might actually be possible, too. You never actually know. I do believe in God, and maybe God will send down an illusion when I die of King Neptune and guide me out into the Atlantic Ocean just like I imagined it, and then will reunite me with the soul of my biological uncle who passed away back in 2012. I already know that one day I'll be back with my biological uncle again and my twin brother. No one's ever really commented on that either, but I did post it in this one forum on Reddit that's what I believe would happen to me after I died. And a couple people upvoted it, and one person even commented on it and told me that that was very touching and a very beautiful thing to believe in. And I really appreciated that comment, and it made me feel happy, really. Getting back to Flagler Beach, why I included it in my cryptic message video is because 4 represents death, and we took Interstate 4 to get to Flagler Beach when the stranger took me there so I could film my video. Also because I had a dream that I died on Flagler Beach, and it wasn't like, it was more like a third-person dream. I saw myself laying out there on the beach wearing my red bandana, the exact way I look in all my YouTube videos, and the coroner car next to me and a bunch of police cars and the detectives talking to each other, and they said that I was out there on the beach and that they didn't know who I was and that I was a John Doe. That's all I remember, really. And I did see myself. I'm not exactly sure how I died out there, though, because from what I saw in the dream, there didn't seem to be any signs of violence on my body at all. However, don't get me wrong, I do not want to die right now. There's stuff that I have to do. There's places I wanted to road trip to. There's games I have to beat. I have to do my video gaming playthroughs for Resident Evil. I have Sims to take care of, and I have you guys watching me do all of it too. And that's the best part, really. And I'm glad you guys watch. And I really appreciate it. I'm really sorry for posting all this negative stuff too, but the thing you guys should remember is that even when I talk about all this rough stuff that went on in my life, like the times I almost died, those videos actually aren't negative. Those are actually happy videos. And let me explain to you guys why. Because I didn't actually die. Because I'm still here, still alive. I almost came close to dying in all those times I mentioned, but I didn't. I'm still here with all of you guys. You're all still watching me. I'm still living, and I plan to keep living for as long as I can and try my best to make the best of it. And that's what everyone should try to do. So enjoy every day and be happy. And that's basically it. So don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. So that's it. Peace out, people.